It's Rachida. We are here for another baking video, and today I'm making the famous panettone, the Italian Christmas bread or cake. It's like a brioche and it has the citrus peels, the candied citrus peels. And by the way, I made a video especially for that because commercially when you find them, they're very expensive. And when you make it at home, it's even cheaper, much cheaper and much better. And sometimes people they put nuts. I did not put nuts in this cake. The core of this cake or bread is the starter. So the first day you start building your feeding your starter, make sure it triple in volume. You may need 2-3 days feeding your starter. And then the second day is making the first dough by mixing the flour, egg yolk, butter, the starter, a little bit of yeast because we needed to give it some strength. And then the third day you add the same ingredients to the first dough, and then you proof it for a long the first proofing, it's a long time. It goes up to 10 hours or overnights. For me, it's not that convenient, so by the end of the day, I'm tired to go to the next step, which after proofing, I put the bowl in the refrigerator, and I will explain that in the details. And then you put the dough in the mold, and I will explain which mold you're going to need for this cake. You put it in the mold and you proof it, not 2 hours, not 3 hours. It's between 5-6 hours, even to 8 hours. And sometime after starting proofing it, I may finish it in the refrigerator because I just don't want to wait, and I will bake them the following day. It looks like it's a long process, but you really don't do much work. It just, there is a wait of time which is long, and you can do something else. And I will take your hand from one step to another. You'll be successful and you will love this bread. We're going to start with the starter. So we're going to feed it, and I always like to feed it at least twice and sometimes 3 times to make sure it triple, it's strong and it's healthy. And that's what I'm doing now. If you don't know how to feed the starter, there is a video just specially for that, so please check it out. So this is like 3 days before you're baking your panettone, or maybe even 4 days. And my starter most of the time is sitting in the refrigerator, so that's why I need to feed it 3 times. So you can see my starter is super healthy, it's strong, I'm good to go. I do keep frozen egg yolk or white egg in the freezer until I need them. This time I have so much egg yolk, so I'm going to defrost them. And to do that, the day before, even 2 days before, I weigh what I need, or before weighing them, I just remove them from the freezer, put them in a container and put them in the refrigerator. You remember I made a video about how to make your own citrus candied peels. So here we have some from the oranges and some from the lemon, and they look maybe similar, but believe me, I have both flavors. So I'm going to strain them from their own syrup and cut them in small pieces. You can do that any day before the day where you're going to make the panettone. So here I'm weighing them, and then I'm going to cut them in small pieces and store them in the refrigerator until I'm ready. So the next day, my egg yolk, they are completely defrosted, and the way to handle them, because they have a very strange and weird texture, they're not appealing at all. Since I have a handheld blender, I'm using it, but you can use just a whisk. It may take a while, because I want it to be as smooth as the fresh eggs. So take your time if you're doing the same thing what I'm doing, and using a whisk or handheld blender, you're going to have a beautiful texture, because you don't want those big chunks in your dough. And once the texture is smooth, silky, then you weigh the egg yolk. Because of the texture of the egg yolk, you may have to weigh it again, and you may lose some of it in the blender, in the spoon. So you want to weigh it again and put it in a container. You can keep it in the refrigerator for another day if you want to do this 2 days ahead of time. I always talk about la mise en place, meaning you prepare everything, put them in separate container. Hopefully they have a lid, and you can put everything in the refrigerator until you're ready. So the day when you are working on that project, there is no chopping, no weighing, no blending. It just, you're ready to go. So we're going to mix the egg yolk, and here we don't have to follow any certain order. Since I did have this egg yolk frozen, I just would like to mix them with some wet ingredient like water. So we're just adding a little bit of water on the egg yolk because they were frozen, to make sure we have every bit of it. And we're going to mix them. Then we're going to add the starter, the yeast, the flour, and like I said, there is no certain order. It's not important to follow any order. You can mix all of it together. We absolutely need a strong mixer. Here I'm using I'll be using the KitchenAid mixer, because this bread or this cake need a lot of kneading, and kneading is extremely important. I know some people, they do it by hand, but I honestly believe the mixer does a really good job. Before kneading, I always like to start mixing with a flat beater, because it allows me to get everything mixed. Then I use the kneading hook to knead this bread. The butter is at room temperature. It's really soft, so be patient. Add it in small portion. Make sure it's completely incorporated in the dough before adding more of it. Clean up the side, and then at this time we're going to use the kneading hook, and we're going to knead this dough for a long time. You may go for 12, even 15 minutes, until the dough, it's silky, it's smooth, the side of the bowl there, it's really clean, and it's a beautiful silky dough. This step is extremely important. Do not skip it. If you do, then your panettone, it will not be successful. So please make sure you get to this stage. Look at the dough, it's beautiful, it's silky. This is a successful panettone. You really need to get to this stage. If not, you will have issues with this bread. By the way, my hand, I put butter on my hand so it doesn't stick, the dough doesn't stick to my hand. Actually, when the dough is successful, it really doesn't. And then we're going to cover the bowl with a plastic lid or anything, and we leave it at room temperature between 8 to 12 hours. And that is very, very important. And by the way, all this plastic bag I'm using, they're all reusable, so I don't throw anything out. I am very aware of the environment, so that plastic bag, I'm going to use it again. And then you're going to deflate the dough, because we're going to add the other half ingredients. But here I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. The reason is because it's late in the day and I'm not ready to go to the next step, so I'll put it in the refrigerator. And it's not necessary, you can go to the next step, but I have to stop because I could not do the next step. It was late in the day. So here I just get it out of the refrigerator after an overnight. And actually I'm going to keep doing this step, meaning proofing the whole thing at room temperature and put it in the refrigerator. Right now we're going to add water, egg yolk, and salt. Remember, we did not put any salt in the last phase, and vanilla. We add it to the dough, and we're going to continue mixing. So of course we add a little bit of water, then we're going to add the flour. And I apologize, it was a little bit messy. The mixer was quite high, so that's why you see a little bit of mess. I have to stop and clean up, and that's why later you're going to see a clean bowl. Because of the video, I would like to make sure everything is clean. Then we're going to add more butter. The butter is at room temperature. We always add little by little until the butter is well mixed with the dough. And again, I am using the flat batter because it's really convenient than the dough or the dough hook. Make sure to clean up the side of the bowl all the time, and we're about to change the kneading hook, the right hook for kneading, and we're going to knead this dough for a long time. It's very, very important until we get that silky, clean texture. It may take 6 minutes, it may take 12 minutes, so be patient. You can see the dough is perfect. I put some butter around on my hand so it doesn't stick, but you can tell the dough is beautiful, it's silky, and it's just beautiful. So we're going to add the raisin. I have some giant raisin. You may cut them in small pieces or leave them that way. And we're going to add also the candied citrus peel, which is we already cut up in small pieces. So here we're just going to mix them. There is no serious kneading we need to do. Is ready to be molded. I'm using some metal mold I recently found out. It's called Silverwood from England. They are absolutely beautiful because the bottom is removable and the diameter of the mold is equal the height of the mold. So I have 7 by 7 and 6 by 6. I have even a small one, and that one is 3 inches by 3 inches. And I'm going to try to glue the bottom, the base to the bottom. The reason is when this dough is completely baked, I'm going to flip the pan. You're going to see it later. It's not necessary, but it helped me to get a perfect panettone. And also with nuts, and this is very, very important, you don't want to put any butter or flour or parchment paper in that mold because the dough will slide. We want the dough to stick. And I'm putting a third of the volume of the mold or less, no more than a third, because it's going to proof, and the volume it may triple, and it has to triple. So you see that's like a quarter of the volume of the mold. That is very important. You will see later why, because this dough is going to triple and it's super fluffy, and that's what we want. So I'm using 7 inch by 7 inch, 6 inch by 6 inch, and also I'm going to use those small ones. They're 3 by 3 and 4 by 4. Here you can put a parchment paper if you want to, but some of them they don't have removable bottom, so I did have to put parchment paper on the base, but not on the side, because we want the dough to stick to the side. While this one I put the parchment paper, sorry, because it's a small pan. And also I'm doing some experiment. I'm always doing some experiment. And I use also the square mold. I'm sorry, Italian, I know you may not like to use the square one, but I just want to play with that. And then you cover them with a plastic lid, anything you have, it has to be covered, and leave them at the room temperature, not for 2 hours, not for 3 hours, up to 8 hours. Yeah, because I've done 2, 3, 4 hours, did not work for me. I have to leave them for a long time. I'm going to use egg white with almond flour, sugar, then melted butter, and I put it on the side until I'm ready to bake the panettone. And I'm going to add some chopped almond, fine chopped almond, not very fine. And like you see, the topping is almost liquid. So when the panettone is ready for baking, you remove the plastic bag or the lid. You're going to see it's literally triple, and you pour the topping, and then you're going to sprinkle some chopped small pieces of almond, and it's going to go to the oven for baking. We do the same thing for the next mold, If your oven is small, just bake one at a time. I use the traditional paper mold, but I try to not use them because they're quite expensive. So I just use my own metal mold. I use that one for you guys in case if you can't find the metal one, you can use the paper mold because they are really good, but they're quite expensive. So again, I'm adding some chopped almond on the top, and we're ready to bake them. For the square one, I put a lid so it holds the shape. So once they're baked, the moment they're out of the oven, you flip them. It's very important because that cake or bread, it will sink. So for the paper one, I just put 2 square, and I have a large bowl, and I'm going to hang it on the bowl and let it sit there for 8 hours or overnight. And the next day or 10 or 12 hours later, the cake or the bread, it's firm. This one I'm going to freeze it so I can give it to a friend or a family member later. So that one is going to the freezer, and you can freeze them nicely. They last easily. So here, since the bread stick to the side, so you have to be patient. Find something skinny like a spatula and try to remove it, or a skewer. Try to relieve it from the side. It's going to take a while because remember, we didn't put any parchment paper. If we did, the dough will not rise up. So I am going to push the bread or the cake using the removable bottom. That's extremely helpful. Remember, this this bread was resting on a base for 10 hours. It's completely cooled down, it's firm. And also I added a heating metal device. I added in the middle. I didn't show you that. It will help me to have the heat uniform inside the mold. Now we have a beautiful panettone, nicely baked. I ripped off the side, but that's the way it is. So you can see it's beautiful. I'm happy with the results. Now we can just put it in a plastic bag and freeze it, or eat it right away. So we're going to relieve this, do the same thing for the other one. This is the stainless steel heating rod. You can buy it from Amazon. It's really cheap. I put it in the middle of the panettone to help me to help the mold to have uniform heats so it's baked nicely. If you don't do that, then I'm going to show you a second one where I didn't use it and it collapsed in the middle, and that's a very natural thing because there is not enough heat in the middle of that giant panettone to help it to rise up. So that's one of the reasons why it collapsed, and that's why I use this stainless steel heating rod. Small ones, we're going to follow the same process, meaning we're going to flip the pan over something like a tart ring or another cake pan on the top of a cooling rack, so it has a space between your kitchen table and the mold itself, so it doesn't steam. It's not really necessary when you're dealing with 3 inches and 4 inches tall cake pan, but just to be safe. And also I may use a parchment paper, I may not use it because again, because it's quite, because of its size. I personally like this small panettone mold or the bread because you can have your own individual panettone. You can freeze them separately. You can give them as a gift. They are very, very convenient. The one without the removable button, I put a parchment paper on the bottom so it's easy to remove. And finally, we have this beautiful panettone, nicely baked, and the texture is just wonderful. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did because this is really my favorite bread or cake. It's challenging, you did see it's challenging, but once you master it, it's a beauty. It's a masterpiece and it tastes so good. I think by now you know what to do. Make sure you subscribe, ask your questions, put your comments, I'll be happy to answer them. Share this video with your friends and your family, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye. Taste it for you. Very good, very good.